if you want to draw a field of organic forms receding away into depth, you can use linear perspective even if your subject matter doesn't have straight lines. Let's take a look at this diagram on the left here. We've got two lines that are parallel to each other that appear to converge at a common vanishing point at the horizon line. Because it's so far away, they appear to meet, even though they actually don't meet. And every so often, I've placed a division. As the vertical measure is halved and halved again and halved again and halved again, you'll also see that the horizontal measure also divides in half for every subsequent line. So this is interesting because it gives you a kind of recipe for how much to diminish your forms as you proceed away in depth. So I've drawn two rectangles here, and I'm going to first draw in this rectangle somewhat methodically, keeping in mind that at every half of a level my form should diminish by half horizontally. And then I'm going to draw in this rectangle rather quickly and intuitively, but keeping in mind that basic rule. And the point is to show how, even in a semi-abstraction, if you're thinking loosely about the rules of perspective and about how forms will diminish in space, even if you're moving quickly and intuitively, you can still pull off a fairly convincing illusion of depth. So let's take a look. So as I'm drawing what could be interpreted as a big rock or a mound or some kind of contour in the landscape. And as I'm moving up, I'm reducing my line thickness somewhat, and I'm thinking about similar types of forms, but half the width and less line thickness, thinner lines, and moving up from there, thinner and thinner lines, increasingly small forms, more tightly packed. What's also happening is that forms that had some kind of height to them as they were closer to the viewer appear to have less and less height, because of course they're further away, so their height becomes less and less vertically perceivable. So finally, when you get up close to the horizon line, you have a myriad of little forms here because it's very far from the viewer, and you're really not seeing anything significant in terms of height. In fact, all of these shapes appear to participate collectively in the overall horizontal expanse of that panorama. You know, unless there were some extremely tall trees at this point, you're not going to see any kind of verticality to these forms. And because I'm choosing not to draw trees, we're not going to see any of these verticality in the distance. So let's add some other forms here. So you can think of this perhaps as some kind of foliage or bushes or some kind of organic growth happening periodically. And as I move back, I'm making these forms smaller. I'm using a thinner line. I'm compressing them horizontally. I'm also compressing them vertically. And then as you proceed into the distance, of course, there's going to be more and more of them visible because it's a wider expanse of landscape that you're looking at the further you go back into the distance. But finally, you wouldn't see much of that foliage. You'd just see more of the texture, perhaps, than anything else. So we've moved back in space. Let's add a few other elements, perhaps something really close in the foreground to have an interesting cropped shape on the lower left-hand corner, and there we go. So let's try now to do this rather quickly and intuitively and see what happens.